The CGA Tour, a podcast unlike any other. Now your host, Calvin Alexander.
Welcome back to the latest episode of the CGA Tour Podcast. As always, here I'm your host, Calvin Glen Alexander. And on this episode of the podcast, I'm joined by the roommate himself, but also NFL fan, Patrick McDermott, recurring guest here on the podcast. Patrick, how's it going?
Going great. We're doing late predictions. We're doing predictions after week one, so we're kind of cheating a little bit, but I'm excited to talk through it. Tons of games to talk about in week one. I'm sure we'll get to a lot of them, not a formal recap, but it was awesome week one, like tons of big games, tons of big, there were some upsets. We had a tie, there's just a lot to get to. And
almost had two ties even too.
Yeah. Which was the other one?
Pittsburgh. Yeah. We had two games go to overtime at least.
I didn't see a lot of that game live. So that I lost track of that one as an almost tie, but yeah, talk about chaos.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit more about basically NFL teams, who we think is going to be great this season, who we think is not going to be great this season, Rookie of the Year, and an MVP guess as well. So we wanted to give week one a little time to marinate because you really can't take too much away from week one anyways. It's such a weird sample size, but it doesn't hurt to give us a little bit of a break there as well, too, to see just how bad the Packers may be. But with that being said, let's start off with the good here, all right? What's a couple teams that surprise you? You think that will surprise everyone going this rest of the year?
Yeah, I'll talk first about a team that they didn't look great in week one, but they looked pretty good. There was a lot of good things to build on. So I want to talk about and highlight first the football team, formerly known as the football team, a.k.a. the Washington Commanders. I think they have a chance to make the playoffs. And some of this doesn't have to do with them. It has to do with the rest of the NFL in the context of their division, which we'll get to. But first of all, Jahan Dotson looks like a giant pickup for them. He was their first round pick and had a couple of spectacular catches. If you haven't seen the one in the end zone, the touchdown catch, I think it was the second touchdown from Carson Wentz, but it's on the left side of the end zone. Just crazy, basically ducking underneath the defender, just crazy highlight reel catch. Lots of reasons to be excited about him. And we knew coming into the season their front seven on defense was going to be really good. Jaguars, they went down the field a couple of times, but again, hard to know exactly how good some of these teams are. But I like Washington. I like the Commanders. I think their biggest question mark is going to be the quarterback. It's going to be Carson Wentz. There was a little bit of a roller coaster on Sunday as far as whether he was going to win them that game or lose it for him. But I think especially now, and we'll get into the Cowboys here, I think, Dak going down, him missing some time, I think the door is open for them for Washington to maybe make some noise and at least, I think, finish above 500, let's say.
I agree with Washington, especially with Dak going down in Dallas. Mine is actually, for a surprising team, is not I think they're going to make the playoffs. But I think they're going to be surprising because I don't think they'll be the worst team in the NFL or one of the top three worst teams. And that is a fellow NFC East team, the New York Football Giants. One, we did do this podcast after week one, so we get to see what happened in week one, which is Dak Prescott going down. I think now, instead of the Giants losing both of those games against the Cowboys, they could win one, especially before Dak comes back, depending on how that all goes. But two here, the Giants beat the Titans. I didn't see the Giants at all playing this close. There's a lot of different NFL survivor pools that I know people are in that had the Titans winning that one.
That was
not naming you actually specifically, but naming, I think my dad picked the Titans. But if not, there were half the teams in the league that I'm in either picked Ravens to beat the Jets, which that was me, or picked the Titans to beat the Giants, which was half the league had to buy back in. I mean, there were 20 people buying back in after that game. Somebody also picked the Raiders, so shout out to the Chargers for
wow, yeah,
pulling it in for that one. That's a bold choice there. There were a couple people who picked the Colts beating the Texans, which brings me to my next surprising team here. I think the Colts will be surprisingly good. A lot of people have also said the Colts will be good. I think the Colts could actually put it all together and be extremely good, even after this week 1, I'm going to say blip against the Texans. Like tying against
Felt
the Texans,
like a loss a little bit.
It's not what you want to do. You don't want to tie against a team that a lot of other NFL pundits are saying could be the worst team in the NFL. You don't want to tie against them week 1. But you know what? Matt Ryan and the Colts offense, they had 80 plays from scrimmage. Matt Ryan threw the ball 50 times. Now, granted, he had 32 completions. But to me, that means that this team is really putting a lot into their offense and just didn't have a lot of success week 1. They put up a ton of stats, 300-plus yards passing.
Jonathan Taylor
Going off on the ground as well. Michael Pittman going off as far as a receiver. So it's not that the Colts didn't excel at what they are trying to do. It's that Matt Ryan lost a fumble and threw an interception and they only scored 20 points. That's where it's a little, all right, not loving that. But week 1 sample size here, I'm throwing all of the water out of the bucket as far as this game goes on how much I think this actually matters, right? Like, not putting any of this week 1 into the Colts here going forward. Whereas I understand with the Giants, I did the exact opposite, and I put a lot of water in that bucket as far as how much I think is going to matter. So, what about you? What do you think's the next game or so? Next team.
So it's a good thing we're doing this before week 2, because if you'd asked me a week ago, I probably would have said the Patriots. And they saved me from making a fool of myself and making an embarrassing pick, because I thought the Patriots were going to be pretty okay. I was pretty bought in on Mac Jones again, super early. Don't want to overreact in either direction, but I'm going to go with the Saints. I think the Saints are going to be pretty darn good. Obviously, they had a good comeback over a mediocre opponent at best in the Falcons, but they looked good, especially in that fourth quarter. Jameis has improved a lot, it looks like, and is healthy. Thomas is back and healthy. Chris Olave, rookie wide receiver. Jameis has some weapons, and they're going to be really good on that defensive front again. Their whole defense, in fact, is basically still back and still as good as ever. So the Saints they didn't get a lot of love this offseason, but I think they could legitimately win that division over the Bucs. I think it'll be a race between them, and they do tend to have the Bucs number. So we'll see if that holds true.
Yeah, Tom Brady 0-4 against the Saints since joining the Bucs. Shockingly 0-4 when, I mean, they've had Drew Brees, and last year they didn't, and last year they didn't even have a starting quarterback who had previously played a lot of games. So also
Taysom Hill with a touchdown on Sunday.
Yeah, a little tight end action. If you haven't picked Taysom Hill in fantasy, maybe worthwhile. My other team here that I'm picking is the Steelers. The Steelers, no one's picking them to win that division. I'm not necessarily picking them to win the division. The division's super, super tough. You've got Bengals, it's 3 points away from winning the NFL Super Bowl last year, or 4 points, I guess, because they lost by 3. But you've also got the Ravens, who are incredibly good as well, too. I just think the Steelers are not going to be horrible. And I've seen a lot of, okay, well, you know what? Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season with the Steelers. Mitch Trubisky, how good can he be? He wasn't really wanted. He was a backup last year, etc. That Steelers defense, granted, T.J. Watt's out with a pectoral injury, for a little bit now. But that Steelers defense is really, really good. And the Steelers offense, they've got a former Oklahoma State guy, running back number 2 there, Jalen Warren, of course. Got to throw him in here as one of the guys that I look out for. But the Steelers, they have a couple of tough games. I mean, they play the Bills, they play the Dolphins. They also play the Saints you just mentioned here and the Colts, and they have their own division to worry about too. But they also get the benefit of playing that AFC South with the Falcons, who I'm not high on at all. They play the Jets in the AFC East too, which has got to be a little bit nice for them to play as well. And the schedule kind of shape ups, well, granted, not the best. They do play the Patriots this weekend, which that'll be a fun game to watch because I have no idea how that's going to go. But the Browns, they've got a good defense, but they couldn't really score a bunch on the Panthers, which I don't think the Panthers' defense is good. And so there's a lot of opportunity here. And then, the Steelers also get to play the Panthers. So I think this is one where the Steelers could get to 10 wins. It's a tough road because of their own division and because they're aside their own division, they do play the Saints. They do play, the Colts. But then again, by playing that AFC South, like they get the chance to match up against a couple of AFC South teams, but mainly here, they get a good shot. They get a good shot here to make a name for themselves in that that Panthers game. That's what I'm circling as like, all right, let's see here. The Steelers, if they don't win, the Panthers won. Grant's all the way in December, but still, that'll really either put the knife through my heart as far as making this prediction or not. So interested to see.
Yeah, I that was about it for me as far as like teams I think will overperform.
Mhm.
Obviously, I like the Bills just like everybody else. I mean,
Yeah.
the Bills looked great. They're going to continue to look great. So, and they, the only knock on the Bills maybe is the depth. The Bills might rely on staying healthy a little bit more than maybe some other contenders. But yeah, I mean, the rest of the AFC, like we'll see. Those were some teams that really jumped out to me though. In the NFC West or the NFC East with Washington, and then NFC South with New Orleans.
Yeah. Well, let's move on a little bit to the other side of it here. With what teams do you think will not do the greatest this year that people are thinking might be okay at least?
Yeah, I mean, this was my big one coming into the year, and you can back me up on that. This isn't a
It's not a new take.
Yeah, this is not a new take. Now, that being said, it probably means I shouldn't have taken them in my survivor pool, but I kind of thought the Titans were going to have a down year going into this year. I did not expect them to lose to the Giants. Unlike you, I think the Giants stink. I don't think the Giants are going to end up being a very good team despite this Week 1 win. But the Titans, that game was awful. I mean, and they have good players, at some positions. Derrick Henry's a beast. I like their coach, Vrabel. But you absolutely cannot lose to the Giants, especially at home. And I didn't like what I saw from them. Like Tannehill actually looked great in the fourth quarter at times. Like him taking them all the way down the field in the final minute to set up for that field goal try. Made some clutch throws, and then Randy Bullock missed the game winner. So that's a tough one. I mean, they could have won that game, obviously, and the Giants played them even, basically. But I think that's a very bad sign. Bad sign for the Titans.
I agree, because the Giants basically just ran the football all over them. They didn't do too much else. And when you're able to stop the run, that leaves a lot of windows open for the opposing teams. Mine is the Jaguars. The Jaguars were not good last year. They're like over-under, depending on the way you look at it, is they're going to more than double their win total this year, which I understand. You've got, you know that I've been saying this before too. Doubling your win total is an insane thing to do with a second-year quarterback, in my opinion. Right? Like, this isn't a team that, like the Ravens last year, that had a ton of injuries, and that's a reason. They did put in a lot of offseason improvements here with wide receiver. They got Christian Kirk, but they overpaid everyone. And then they got Doug Peterson, who is a good NFL head coach.
Him. Yeah.
Like him a lot. But as far as them being a team that, they're going to be good or halfway decent or whatever, I didn't see something out of Trevor Lawrence last year, which was like, oh, you know what? Like, they could be all right. And losing to Washington when Washington just, did not have a great game. Went through 2 picks, and Jacksonville just didn't win the game. Lawrence also threw an interception, but he had 1 touchdown in that game. I'm definitely like stat looking here to see to kind of help prove my point, but the Jaguars just have a really tough schedule this year too. Like, more of the schedule deal. Granted, they do get to play the Giants, but I think the Giants will have a good chance to beat them. They do play in the AFC South, that I don't think is the greatest division ever, but I think the Colts will be good, as I said before, too. Jaguars here play in LA against the Chargers. They play the Eagles. They play the Chiefs. They also play a couple teams that I just think will be a little bit better than them. And like the Lions, they have got to go to Detroit. And then they have to play the Raiders. They have to play the whole AFC West, right? So, which I could see them losing every game. I don't think that the Broncos are world beaters, but Jaguars, Cowboys on December 18th, figured Dak's back by then, right? Jaguars, Jets, I don't know. Maybe it's a toss-up. Maybe it's not. But
I think that last stretch of 3 games, Jets, Texans, Titans. I think like if the Jaguars get something like that's going to be their chance to have some momentum going into next year.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I don't think they're going to make any noise this year. Even in that division, which I think is weak. I mean, I don't necessarily think. I mean, probably the Texans or the Jaguars. One of the two will probably overperform, and win like 6-7 games or something. But I agree. I don't think it's going to be the Jaguars. I think, they have a tough road early, especially. They have a tough road. Like you said, the AFC West Chargers are on the road. They also play the Ravens in there. Like that's an unusual game. Like they just happen to get them from the north. So, I think that pick is good. I would throw the Dolphins out there. The Dolphins won on Sunday.
They beat that Patriots team you almost
Patriots
picked.
team that I used to like and now think is terrible. I went back and watched quite a bit of that Dolphins Patriots game, and the Patriots look bad. Like they looked bad. They could do nothing. Now, that being said, I'm not saying that means the Dolphins are bad. I'm saying people should not look at the good things about this game and put much store in them. I'm not convinced the Dolphins are going to be any good. I think Tua is probably the biggest question mark at quarterback on a potentially playoff contending team. I mean, I don't see it with Tua. I'm definitely hesitant to say they'll win more than 8-9 games.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, my team has a really questionable quarterback, and in fact, his backup still is on the team because they couldn't find a trade partner for him. And that's the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah.
That week 1 game against the Bears, granted, it's a super weird game. The field is wet. They're squeegeeing it off before the game.
It was a lake.
So should I put a lot of stock into it? Maybe, maybe not. But Justin Fields had 3 completions in that game. I'm pretty sure. And the Bears scored 19 points.
19 unanswered.
19 unanswered. And also, Trey Lance he had 13 completions, 1 interception, 164 yards passing. So is he just literally just ducking it off to a couple guys? And Fields, to be serious, had 8 completions here, not to use too much hyperboles. But the Bears, I thought going into this game, would lose by 80. And if people in the survivor pool were picking a game, I was thinking, all right, you know what? Maybe I'll pick the Niners here. This should be an easy one. How many other times am I going to pick the Niners? Because they also have to play the AFC West. So the AFC West is a gauntlet for teams. And when you're looking at the schedule-wise, did Trey Lance give me a lot of hope after week 1? No. But has he given me a lot of hope, period? Not really. I'm curious to see how they do against Seattle. It's a home game for them this weekend. That'll be a lot, a lot of energy that I'm having here against the Niners doing bad will be put into, okay, well, how did they do against the Seahawks? Because this trade that Kyle Shanahan did for Trey Lance could go down as one of the weirdest deals ever if Trey Lance is not proven to be a dude, period.
Plus, I think that trade that was a 3-team trade, wasn't it, with the Eagles and the Dolphins? Isn't that how they moved up to that slot?
I think so. They gave up 3 first-round picks to get the first-round pick, right?
Yeah,
to move in that slot.
They moved up with, or the Dolphins traded. I'm going to get it wrong. I'll have to look it up. But I know the Dolphins traded their pick, and then traded the pick that they traded for to accumulate more additional picks. There was a lot of moves going on. I'll find the exact the sequence of it.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I'm with you. I think the 49ers are majorly suspect. I'm not all the way out on Trey Lance, but I am mostly out on Trey Lance. I think I don't necessarily see it. I think the fact that he played in 1 college football game in the 18 months before he was drafted is a big deal. I don't know. I think there's no substitute for game experience. And I don't know. I think maybe he'll be good someday, but I don't necessarily see it. But I do think Shanahan's a good coach and they have a good defense. So, I trust him quite a bit to scheme their players and maximize them and probably be better than their roster should be. But yeah, I don't really see them making the playoffs either.
I just their own division isn't as easy as I thought it was after week 1. Right. Seahawks beating
Cardinals,
the Broncos.
I don't know.
Seahawks beating the Broncos was very surprising to me. The Cardinals looked horrible against the Chiefs, but also the Chiefs could look maybe just historically good against everyone, and Mahomes could just show up everyone this offseason. Just hear all the offseason talk about Herbert possibly winning MVP, and Mahomes going, I've got an offensive line now. Watch out. Right. And we could see it would be one of those deals where the Cardinals maybe got caught flat-footed. I'm not putting stock in the Cardinals one way or the other. I have no idea how good they'll be. But when I'm looking at the 49ers schedule here, and a lot of this that I'm basing off of is the schedule, so they play the Seahawks. All right, well, the Seahawks aren't just easy. Geno Smith looked really good against the Broncos defense that I didn't think was horrible. And then the 49ers got to go play the Broncos, which just talked about them. But then, besides their own division, where they play the Rams and the Cardinals and the Seahawks, they also have a couple other teams here that are just really tough. They play that AFC West, so they've got the Chargers, they've got the Raiders. They also play the Saints, who, after you lose to the Bears the way you do and give up 19 unanswered, I'm not picking you to win against the Saints. I'm not picking you to win against the Dolphins. Definitely not against the Bucs.
McDaniel revenge game there.
Ooh, I like that idea a lot too. I mean, you said you're high on the Washington former football team Commanders now. They play them this year as well. There's just quite a few teams where, you know what, when the Niners play the Raiders, if that game was in Levi Stadium, I'd be curious to see what the ratio was, black versus red. But it's in Vegas, so it'll just be fun to see that game no matter what. But yeah, Niners. Every single podcast I listened to of any guy talking about the NFL, it was just, how bad do we feel about Justin Fields this year? He's going to get demolished. Is he going to not be able to play the whole 17 weeks because he's going to get injured, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Just who are his receivers? If I name these guys and a mixture of other wide receivers that are just around the NFL, how many can you name that play for the Bears? If I name a bunch of the cast from Top Gun, the movie, and also Bears wide receivers, who can you pick out which one's which? And honestly, yeah, a couple now, because it was a fun segment that The Ringer did on their NFL show. But it was one that stuck with me because the Bears won the game. And granted, they didn't do it through the air, so the whole wide receiver bit's kind of played out. But that showed me, okay, wait a second here. Let's go back here a little bit and see. Maybe Kyle Shanahan just cannot be a wizard when he can't throw the ball, but Trey Lance is one of the best abilities he has, is being able to be mobile and kind of get out of the pocket and get some completions downfield. And any fantasy owner who has Trey Lance, myself, is really looking at that going, wow, did I make a mistake?
I mean, the biggest vote of confidence for the 49ers for me is the fact that I basically felt the same way about them going into last season, and they made a playoff run, almost made a Super Bowl. Like that's the biggest thing that makes me go, all right, maybe they'll be okay, because Shanahan usually figures out how to make them good. So,
yeah.
I mean, he's a really good coach. Like I just think he elevates his players a lot. Like everything you were saying, like I agreed with you. Like, but then I remembered that I felt this way last year too, and it backfired on me. So we'll see. I mean, obviously nobody really knows yet, but I do think they have a ton of question marks.
Yeah. Well, Rookie of the Year and MVP. The last two here, so we kind of do a 30-minute-ish podcast episode. What are you thinking here?
Okay, so I'll start with Offensive Rookie of the Year, and there's a lot. There's a lot of guys out there, and it's early, and you're looking at, who's going to get the most touches, who's going to put up the numbies. But I'm going with Drake London, and I think he's the favorite right now, or tied for the favorite, maybe with Olave. But he was my favorite wide receiver in this draft coming in. I think the Atlanta Falcons picked him up at a perfect time, like perfect draft slot. Like they got really good value on him, and I think he's the guy they wanted. So he's also going to get a lot of targets this year. Like he had a really good first game with them, but between Kyle Pitts and Cordero Patterson, like you don't necessarily have another guy missing Calvin Ridley, obviously. So I really think he's going to get his share, and he's a much different receiver than either of those guys. So he fills a really good hole in that offense for me. Who's your offensive guy?
Mine, it kind of for the same reason, but basically just because I don't think the rest of the team is that good around him, and I think he'll get a ton of touches. But is Iowa State kid, Breece Hall, with the Jets.
Yeah.
I mean, basically you got Joe Flacco and then Zach Wilson coming on at some point. I mean, Breece Hall, I think, is just going to get a lot of play. Like you're saying with Drake London here, he's going to get a lot of opportunity. Get the ball in the passing game. You would think as well too. That's more of it than anything else. It's just that probably some good value if somebody is out there betting on it. But Breece Hall is the guy I could see at the end of the year being like, oh wow, he had 1,000 yards rushing. No, I didn't even think about it. Like we're putting together bouts or whatever. Whenever you look at the other guys, you're like, well, the guy getting him the ball doesn't matter as much when it's the running back. So I like that a lot better too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the Jets, and we didn't really talk about them much earlier, but if there's one spot that they probably feel okay about, it's running back, because Breece Hall, an exciting rookie, like long time staple player in the Big 12. I know we both saw him for years. They also have Michael Carter. So he's again going to be used in the passing game a lot. But I agree with you. Breece Hall has all the tools. He can definitely run some guys over. Especially, I think he'll probably get bigger. Over the next couple of years. So exciting to see what he does. And yeah, do you know what the odds are on Breece Hall to win?
I do not. Off the top of my head here.
I'll grab it here as I'll move on to defensive rookie.
Ooh, okay.
So I'm going to take Aiden Hutchinson. I think it might seem like a chalk pick, but it's hard to say. I mean, there's not a lot of it's not a quarterback only award, like the MVP is. We've seen defensive backs win this. We have seen a lot of pass rushers win it, but I think Hutchinson is going to cause some problems. I think he was the best player in the draft coming out, and the Lions are going to use him aggressively and really just kind of let him loose. And I think he's also a likable guy. Like, this is an award that gets voted on. These are people who tend to gravitate toward likable people, and he's just he made a really good impression on Hard Knocks, I think, and like people are generally rooting for the guy. So I'll take Aiden Hutchinson.
Defensively, honestly, I don't even know. I mean, there's just so many guys that. I want to pick another guy who's a Lion, but I'm not going to pick Malcolm Rodriguez.
Possible Oklahoma State Cowboy, maybe?
Yeah, possible. Defensively, there's the Aiden Hutchinson pick, I think, is great. Kayvon Thibodeau comes to mind too, but granted, like it's tough to win it when you're playing for the Giants, who.
And he, injury in the preseason. Yeah,
it's just
we'll see.
Just tough with that storyline. Yeah, so I defer to you on that one with Aiden Hutchinson, honestly. Just really tough.
And I know we want to wrap it up here. I'll throw a couple of just long shots at you.
Okay. Yeah, please.
By the way, Breece Hall is 14-1.
Okay.
To win Rookie of the Year. So that's 10th best odds. So I like that. A couple of guys on the same team that I wouldn't be too surprised if they made some noise. Isaiah Pacheco. On the Chiefs, and at cornerback Trent McDuffie. So these are both rookies that are going to see lots of playing time for the Chiefs. Pacheco wasn't obviously a high round guy, but they used him a lot Sunday, and he looks a little bit like Tyreek out there with the number 10. So keep an eye on him. If he gets enough touchdowns and they start using him consistently, we'll see. And Trent McDuffie was just another one of my favorites from the draft. I think he's really, really good in coverage, and we'll see if he stands out enough, gets enough picks. Long shot.
Yeah. Gonna be a long shot for sure. Real quickly here, what are you thinking about MVP?
I think it's going to be Allen or Herbert. I do. I think they both looked incredibly impressive in week 1. They have the weapons. Herbert has Keenan Allen injured this week. Doesn't look like it's going to be long term, but they both just have plenty of guys to throw the ball to, and they have just a cannon of an arm. So I think it's going to be one of those two guys, but I'll probably give the edge to the favorite, Allen.
I'm just gonna say there's a huge bias I have for the Chargers this year. I would pick the Chargers to win the Super Bowl if it made sense. But with that being said, here last year, I don't think Aaron Rodgers won a playoff game and yet won MVP. So I don't necessarily know if it matters too much on that regard. I still could pick the Chargers to win at all. At that point, though, there's so much buzz around Herbert possibly winning MVP. I'm just gonna go ahead and say, and I think Herbert pulls it off. I think at the end of the day, like Allen being out for this game, maybe another one. Hopefully he's back. That'd be one heck of a good storyline. And then also, like, the Chargers defense looked pretty darn good in week 1. The offense, I think, just should have scored another touchdown or two. But that being said, I'm picking Herbert. Picking Herbert itself. So
I like it.
I think it's great.
And in looking at the current MVP odds, in case you were curious,
yes, please. Yeah.
The highest chance for the highest MVP chance for a non-quarterback, Jonathan Taylor at 50-1, the 17th best odds to win MVP. So half of the league's starting quarterbacks are favored above.
Gosh, that is bizarre. That is bizarre.
Quarterbacks like Trey Lance and Tua Tagovailoa are both have better odds to win the Heisman than arguably the best running back in the league, Jonathan Taylor.
Podcast over. That's just crazy. I can't even believe that. That's something that, please follow the CGA Tour on Twitter and Instagram for more. That is something that I cannot believe is real. When's the last time a non-quarterback won the MVP? Is that part of this?
Adrian Peterson?
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
That's a question.
Yeah.
I think it was Adrian Peterson, but
let me see here. We've got a minute left on the outro music. Let me see here. List of down to the wire MVPs. There are so.
Adrian Peterson, 2012.
Yeah, so it's just been that long. And you know what? There's a lot of value there, so somebody should do that because I'm not someone who gambles, or I shouldn't say gambles, but I'm not someone who makes really bets. Yeah, so it's bets, gambles, whatever. Not someone who, but if you wanted to, I'm sure there's great value in it because let's see here, going back to 2012,
50-1 for Jonathan Taylor,
and before then, it was quarterbacks for like 5 years in a row, and then it was LaDainian Tomlinson in 2006, and then before then Sean Alexander. So it's just it's such a quarterback heavy award. I'm looking here to see who was the last. So Lawrence Taylor is the last guy to win it that wasn't a quarterback or a running back, and that's in 1986. So if you're picking besides a quarterback, it's got to be a running back or no one. So. Well, that being said, Patrick, thank you so much for joining here on the latest episode of the CGA Tour.
Absolutely.
And catch you guys again soon. Peace.